Mercedes did not just find speed at Barcelona. They found the kind of advantage that makes every other team look slow, confused, and one step behind. And the frightening part is this: the trick may not be in one obvious upgrade. It may be hiding in the exact moment the car changes from being inspected to being unleashed on track. The engine, the front wing, the tire life, Russell's collapse, Antonelli's rise, all of it points toward one uncomfortable possibility. Mercedes may have discovered a gap in the rules so powerful that by the time rivals understood it, the damage was already done. And if the Federación Internacional del Automóvil closes that gap now, Barcelona may not be remembered as the race where Mercedes proved their dominance. It may be remembered as the race where everyone finally saw how they were doing it. Subscribe to the channel. Barcelona is the kind of circuit where excuses disappear. A team can hide weakness at a street track. A driver can cover a balance problem with bravery. A setup mistake can be disguised by traffic, strategy, or weather. But Barcelona is different. Barcelona asks the same question over and over again, through long corners, heavy tire load, fast direction changes, and exits where power matters immediately. Is the car truly good, or was it only pretending? That is why Mercedes' speed there sent such a strong message through the paddock. Because the car did not just look quick in one area. It looked complete. It looked stable on entry, strong in the middle of the corner, and sharp when the driver needed to get back on the throttle. That combination is rare. Usually, when a team gains in one place, it pays for it somewhere else. More downforce can mean more drag. More straight-line speed can mean less grip. More aggressive balance can mean worse tire wear. But Mercedes seemed to have found a way to reduce the compromise. And that is where rival teams start to worry. Because Formula One is not only a race between drivers. It is a race between interpretations. Every team reads the same rulebook, but not every team sees the same opportunity. Some teams build what the rules clearly allow. The dangerous teams build what the rules forgot to forbid. Mercedes have lived in that space before. They know that a championship-winning advantage does not always look dramatic. It does not need to be a giant new part on the car. It does not need to be something fans can spot immediately. Sometimes, the most powerful advantage is almost invisible. A few degrees of temperature. A few milliseconds of movement. A tiny delay. A small change in how the car behaves when it is no longer sitting still, but being pushed to the edge. And that is exactly what made Barcelona feel so suspicious. The timing was too perfect. The Federación Internacional del Automóvil had already been forced to look at questions around Mercedes' power unit. Rival manufacturers were concerned about compression ratio, which is basically how tightly the engine squeezes air and fuel before ignition. The tighter the squeeze, the more energy the engine can produce. The rule limited that ratio to 16:1. Simple on paper. But Formula One is never simple on paper. The issue was how the limit was being measured. If the engine was checked at ambient temperature, it could pass the test while cold. But an engine does not race cold. It races hot. It expands. It changes. Materials behave differently when they are under extreme heat and pressure. And the allegation was that Mercedes may have found a way for the engine to remain legal during the check, then gain an advantage once it reached its real operating condition. That is a terrifying idea for every rival. Because it means they were not only racing a faster car. They may have been racing a car that changed character after inspection. Think of it like a runner wearing shoes that look normal at the start line, but become springier once the race begins. The officials checked the shoes before the sprint. Everything looked fine. But the advantage only appeared when the pressure came on. That is why the Barcelona performance mattered. If Mercedes were still strong when the new checks began to look at operating temperature as well as ambient temperature, then the team could argue that the suspicion was overblown. But if the performance changed, even slightly, rivals would know exactly where to look. And this is where the story gets even more uncomfortable. Because the engine was not the only area under suspicion. The Mercedes front wing had also become a major talking point. Under the active aerodynamic rules, the front wing had to move between its allowed positions within 400 milliseconds. That is less than half a second. The rule was designed to keep movement controlled, predictable, and fair. But reports suggested the Mercedes wing may have been doing something more clever. It may have moved enough within the legal window to satisfy the system, then continued toward its final position over a longer period. That detail sounds tiny. It is not. At Barcelona, a front wing is not just a piece of carbon fiber. It is the key to the car's confidence. If the front wing gives the driver a stronger, cleaner, more stable feeling through the long corners, everything improves. The tires suffer less. The steering feels more precise. The driver can commit earlier. The car can carry speed without sliding as much. And when that happens lap after lap, the advantage becomes brutal. This is the part most fans miss. Mercedes may not have needed one massive secret weapon. They may have had two smaller advantages working together. One helping the car on power. One helping the car through the air. And when those two things meet at a track like Barcelona, the result can look impossible to match. That is why the paddock reaction matters. Rivals were not simply angry because Mercedes were fast. Formula One teams expect rivals to be fast. They accept genius, even when it hurts. What they cannot accept is the feeling that one team has found a way to pass the test, then perform in a different state once the real race begins. That feeling creates paranoia. Every onboard shot becomes evidence. Every straight-line speed comparison becomes suspicious. Every corner entry becomes a clue. Engineers start asking whether the Mercedes advantage is coming from power, aero, tires, driver confidence, or something that connects all of them. And the most dangerous answer is the connected one. Because if the speed trick is connected, then banning one part may not kill the whole advantage. Mercedes could still have knowledge others do not. They could still understand how the car behaves across temperature, timing, and movement better than anyone else. They could lose one gray area and still remain ahead because the philosophy behind it is already baked into the car. That is why Barcelona was not just another race. It was a warning shot. A warning that Mercedes may have entered this phase of the season with a deeper understanding of the new regulations than every other team. A warning that their rivals may have spent months chasing visible upgrades while Mercedes were exploiting invisible conditions. A warning that by the time the rest of the grid finally understood the trick, the championship damage may already have been done. And this is where the story stops being only technical. Because inside Mercedes, the same car was creating two completely different realities. For Kimi Antonelli, it looked like a weapon. For George Russell, it looked like a mystery. And that contrast may reveal more about the Mercedes speed trick than any official statement ever could. The strangest part of the Mercedes story is not that the car is fast. It is that the same car seems to be telling two completely different stories. On one side of the garage, Kimi Antonelli looks like he has been handed the perfect machine. The car responds. The confidence grows. The lap time appears. Every race seems to make him more dangerous, not less. He is young, but he does not look overwhelmed. He looks comfortable in pressure, almost too comfortable for a driver who is supposed to be learning the weight of Formula One in real time. And that is what makes it frightening for every other team. Because when a rookie starts winning like that, the first reaction is admiration. Then comes doubt. Then comes the question nobody wants to say too loudly. Is this pure talent, or has Mercedes built a car that unlocks him in a way the rest of the grid cannot understand? That question becomes even sharper when you look at George Russell. Russell was supposed to be the reference. He was supposed to be the experienced leader. He had already lived through the pressure of Mercedes. He knew the team, knew the systems, knew the language of the engineers. After Lewis Hamilton left for Ferrari, this looked like Russell's moment to take control of the project. And at the beginning, that story made sense. He won in Australia. He looked ready. The natural order seemed clear. Russell would lead. Antonelli would learn. Mercedes would manage the transition carefully. But Formula One does not care about the story a team wants to tell. It only cares about the stopwatch. China changed the feeling. Antonelli won. Then Japan made it impossible to ignore. Antonelli won again. Suddenly, the young driver was not waiting behind Russell anymore. He was moving past him. Not with loud words. Not with politics. With results. And results are the most brutal language inside a Formula One team. Because once one driver starts winning, everything changes around him. The engineers listen differently. The media asks different questions. Strategy meetings feel different. The garage energy shifts. Nobody needs to admit it out loud. Everyone feels it. For Russell, the pressure started to look heavier every weekend. He had problems, yes. Technical issues. Setup gambles. Bad timing. Moments where the race seemed to turn against him at the worst possible second. But when those problems happen while your teammate is winning, they stop sounding like bad luck to the outside world. They start sounding like a pattern. That is unfair. But Formula One is often unfair. A driver can do almost everything right and still lose the narrative. And once the narrative turns, it becomes another opponent. One that sits in every press conference, every headline, every radio message, every quiet conversation inside the team. Russell's own words showed how deep the frustration had gone. He said he was not feeling too lucky after Suzuka. Later, after Monaco, the tone became much darker. He said he was flat. Beyond frustration. Struggling to comprehend what was going on. He said nothing was clicking. He admitted his driving style was not working with the car. That is not normal driver disappointment. That is a warning flare. When a driver says his style does not work with the car, he is saying something very serious. He is saying the car is demanding something from him that does not feel natural. He is saying the lap time is there, but not in a place he can easily reach. He is saying the machine has a secret language, and his teammate may be speaking it better. Now connect that back to the suspected Mercedes speed trick. If the advantage comes partly from the way the car behaves under heat, under load, and through moving aerodynamic surfaces, then the driver's relationship with the car becomes critical. This is not just about pressing the throttle and going faster. The driver has to trust when the front of the car will bite. He has to feel when the rear will stay with him. He has to know how early he can commit to the corner before the car reaches the point of no return. A car with a very specific aerodynamic behavior can reward one style massively and punish another quietly. That may be what we are seeing. Antonelli looks like a driver who can lean into the Mercedes. He appears able to accept what the car wants and exploit it before anyone else has fully understood it. Russell, by contrast, sounds like a driver trying to force the car into a language it no longer speaks. And that difference could explain why the Mercedes advantage looks so devastating from the outside. It is not only that the car has speed. It is that one driver appears able to access the best version of that speed at exactly the right moment. Barcelona makes that even more important. Long corners require trust. You cannot hesitate through them. A driver who waits too long loses the tire. A driver who turns in without confidence starts sliding. A driver who does not believe the front wing will give him the grip he expects will always leave a little margin. And in Formula 1, a little margin is enough to lose everything. Antonelli may be taking that margin away. Russell may be living inside it. That is why the team dynamic matters so much to the technical story. Usually, when a car is simply better, both drivers look better. One may be faster, but both feel lifted by the machinery. Here, the contrast feels sharper. One driver is rising like the car was built for him. The other is asking why the same car has stopped making sense. That is a clue. Maybe not proof, but definitely a clue. Because if a technical advantage is easy to use, both drivers benefit immediately. If it is narrow, sensitive, and connected to timing, temperature, and balance, then the driver who understands it first becomes almost impossible to catch. That is what rivals fear. They are not just chasing Mercedes. They may be chasing Antonelli's relationship with the Mercedes. A relationship built on confidence, instinct, and a car behavior nobody else can copy quickly. And this is where the pressure on Mercedes begins to multiply. Because a team can defend a technical idea to the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. It can explain the engine. It can explain the wing. It can argue that everything is within the rules. But it cannot easily explain why its experienced driver sounds lost while its rookie looks unstoppable. That contrast invites more questions. Is the car being developed in a direction that suits Antonelli more naturally? Is Russell struggling because the car requires a driving style he does not want to use? Is Mercedes now trapped between protecting its fastest current package and rescuing the driver who was supposed to be its leader? And most importantly, if the speed trick is limited or removed, which Mercedes driver suffers more? That is the question nobody can answer yet. If the power advantage is reduced by hotter compliance checks, does Antonelli still look untouchable? If the front wing behavior is restricted by a technical directive, does the car still give him the same confidence? If the balance changes even slightly, does Russell come back into the fight, or does Mercedes lose the very thing that made the car dominant? This is why Barcelona feels like the beginning of a much bigger fight. The race is not only about whether Mercedes can beat Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, or anyone else on the track. It is about whether Mercedes can keep control of a car that may be technically brilliant, politically vulnerable, and emotionally dangerous all at once. Because inside the team, the championship picture is becoming awkward. Antonelli leads. Russell is under pressure. Lewis Hamilton, now at Ferrari, has moved above Russell in the standings. That detail is almost cruel. The driver Russell once shared Mercedes with, the legend who left, is now sitting ahead of him while a teenage teammate takes the spotlight inside his own garage. That is the kind of pressure that can change decisions. It can change how a driver attacks qualifying. It can change how much risk he takes in the first corner. It can change how he reacts when the team asks him to hold position, protect tires, or think about the bigger picture. And Mercedes have already seen signs of danger. In Canada, Russell and Antonelli fought hard enough that contact became part of the story. Contact between teammates is never just a racing incident. It is a message. It tells the team that the drivers are no longer just competing against rivals. They are measuring each other in public, at speed, with championship points on the line.